Sometimes you may be asking God for things in your prayers that God really does want to give you. But then sometimes He can't give them to you because there's something going on in your life that hinders the answers to your prayers. The Bible teaches us that one of the things that will hinder the answer to your prayers is when you do not have compassion and generosity toward those who are in need. In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 13, it says, "Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered." That verse really doesn't need a whole lot of explanation, does it? It's pretty clear that God says that when we encounter someone in need, and if we shut up our hearts and have no compassion and no generosity toward them, then the time will come when we will cry out to God in need, and God will treat us the way that we treat others. The scripture says in 1 John chapter 3, verse 17, that if any one of you, believers, has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity or compassion on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. You see, God is at work in every one of our lives as His children, seeking to make us more like His Son Jesus. And as we grow to become more and more like Jesus, then we should be growing more and more in compassion and giving and in generosity toward others who are in need. Now, the truth of the matter is that there's a real tendency that as we grow older, that we've all been taken advantage of by people who claim to have a need, and maybe we helped them, and we found out later on that it was self-inflicted bad choices on their part, or maybe they weren't willing to work, or whatever it might be. If we're not careful as we get older, we will become more cynical and critical and skeptical and less compassionate and generous. So I would encourage you. The Bible tells us we should be discerning and wise. And so we ought to be growing in wisdom and discernment, in compassion and generosity at the same time. So evaluate your life. Are you growing in compassion and generosity? Because if you're not compassionate and generous toward those in need, it will hinder the answer to your prayers.